Before I even started speaking, most of you already made a decision about me. It wasn't intentional, nor was it conscious. But somewhere in the back of your mind, you began filling in the gaps. Perhaps it was the way I walked onto stage, or how I'm speaking to you right now. Maybe you decided what I believe, what I think is best, or maybe even what I'm about to speak to you today. And the interesting thing is, you're not wrong for that. In fact, it's just human. Research from Princeton University finds that we form stable first impressions of people in as little as 1/10 of a second, long before the brain even has a chance to emerge with context. We sort and categorize, which means statistically speaking, most of you have already decided whether I binge Love Island or read the Financial Times. The truth? Neither. But for most of human history, that same reflex kept us alive. It helped us distinguish ally from enemy, friend from foe. Categorization was the key to our survival as a species. Yet survival instincts were never meant to serve as our moral conclusions. Here's the nuance. The problem isn't that we categorize people. It's that we believe the category explains them. We move from observation to conclusion without ever pausing in between. And that's what I call the completion moment. The moment at which we decide we've heard enough. We label and convict. And when that label becomes the verdict, our curiosity is no longer necessary. The person standing right in front of us somehow becomes secondary to the summary we created about them. And social psychologists have long studied how quickly empathy can shift when someone is perceived to belonging to an outgroup. And what they found wasn't radical hatred, rather something quieter, and in many ways, much more dangerous. They found that our empathy declines gradually. We become less willing to extend patience, less inclined to assume complexity, and more comfortable in reducing someone to the most convenient interpretation of who they must be. See, our empathy erodes in increments so small, they almost feel rational. But sometimes, this quiet erosion isn't always so quiet. In April of 2023, 16-year-old Ralph Yarrow rang the wrong doorbell while trying to pick up his siblings from a neighbor's house. Yet what the homeowner saw wasn't a neighbor. He didn't even see a mistake. What he saw was a threat. Ralph was shot twice. And while he survived, the reflex that nearly killed him wasn't rage. It was a completion moment. A split-second categorization hardened into certainty and acted upon as if it were unquestionable truth. Completion at its extreme is lethal. Now, while many of us will never pick up that weapon ourselves, we engage in tighter versions of this same reflex almost every day. We hear conservative and assume intolerance, liberal and assume naivety, religious, dogmatic, activist, extremist. We don't even wait for the second sentence anymore. And rarely do we even hear the first. Research in political psychology shows that we consistently over-exaggerate how radical our ideological opponents actually want. You see, our algorithms, they reward outrage. Because for them, outrage sustains attention, and attention sustains their profit. Nuance never trends, but conflict sure does. So our headlines are sharpened until they cut, and narratives compressed until they fit inside a single frame small enough for us to scroll past. Breaking news becomes breaking trust, and we're fed identities without context. Conclusions without conversation stay informed, we're told. And all too often what we're consuming isn't information. It's completion. Somewhere between the 24-hour news cycles and algorithmic feeds, we stopped meeting people, started meeting distortion with them. And once a distortion feels familiar, the person, you and me, begin to feel unnecessary. If this seems abstract, I promise you, it isn't. I've lived it. Growing up Indian and Christian, I've seen how quickly identity can arrive in a room long before you do. Questions were less framed as inquiries and more as confirmations. It wasn't always the hostility that unsettled me. It was the finality. Because I could sense when the end of the story had already been written. Like someone skimmed the headline and decided they didn't need to read the full article. It wasn't being understood. It was being explained. An explanation without examination is just an assumption with better grammar. To be honest, I've done the same thing. I've seen others and thought, I know exactly what that means. The reality is, I didn't. I mistook a fragment of their story for the full narrative. Confused my recognition with my understanding. And that confusion is comfortable, because it allows us to feel informed without ever actually being invested. Maybe that's why today, division doesn't always resemble history's loudest conflicts. It looks like the quiet dismissal. Scrolling past someone's humanity because we believe we've already processed it. It sounds like confident commentary built upon minimal context. The irony is we live in the most connected generation of human history. Yet studies published in the Annual Review of Political Science only reveal deepening distrust and hostility between us. Information has skyrocketed, yet our patience and understanding has not. You see, we once engraved "Give me your tired, your poor" at the base of a statue as a declaration of welcome. Nowadays, it seems we've added an asterisk, terms and conditions apply. We invite differences until they disrupt us. We champion diversity until it disagrees with us. We celebrate individuality until it contradicts our own assumptions. Our tolerance often extends only as far as our own comfort. And I'm afraid that's just not far enough. So today, I propose something new, something different. Categorization is our instinct, and resisting the completion moment must become our discipline. The first thought that arises about someone is human. The decision to let it stand uncontested is moral. It requires humility to accept that a label does not exhaust human life, and courage to let someone exceed the outline we drafted for them. Because when you reduce someone to a single descriptor, you don't just minimize them. You diminish their complexity. And when you strip someone of their complexity, you strip them of their humanity. My invitation to you is this. The next time you find yourself moving to a completion moment, pause long enough to consider what you might be missing. Now, I'm never asking you to agree with every Swiftie and Kanye fan out there, but consider what they're saying. Let the category introduce, not indict. Let it prompt inquiry rather than terminate it. Stay in the conversation long enough to engage each other's complexity. Because I truly believe, if we can slow the speed at which we finish each other's stories, maybe then we may not eliminate disagreement, but we may recover something far more important, our humanity. Because in a world addicted to AI summaries and sharpened headlines, perhaps our most radical act, our most human act, is to avoid treating each other as one. Thank you.